there, set apart students and families, and thank you for tuning in to tonight's service. Well, tonight we are talking about giving God our best. A lot of times we try to fit God into our schedule rather than basing our lives around Him. And sometimes we find that our biggest idol in life is ourself. We're going to talk about what it looks like to give God your best, to make Him number one in your life, and to base everything around Him being the center of your life. Enjoy tonight's message. Optimal pursuit. Optimal pursuit. These two words are two words God spoke to me a couple of weeks back when I was just like, man, God, I feel like I'm in a funk. I feel like I'm not intentionally moving forward. What is going on? And God said optimal pursuit. And I knew exactly what it meant. And I want to share with you tonight. So last week, 2 weeks ago, something like that, I was at Grady V's. Y'all know how that goes, right? So I just want to know, like, who here is ever like you'd say I want to be a server at a restaurant? That'd be pretty fun. Yeah. Okay. Only two of you. There's so many stories, right? I got one for you. Okay. Had this family come in. They're like, "Oh man, we love you serving us. Like, how long have you been here?" I was like, 4 years. They're like, "Man, we never see you." I was like, "They never see me. I'm only here like twice a month. If they're lucky, I'm only here twice a month. If they're lucky. Nah, if I'm lucky, I'm only here twice a month. But I was like, "Yeah, we love serving you. Want to see you when you come back." I said, "Cool." So they're ordering their food, all this stuff. This lady orders one of our premier sandwiches, the turkey pesto panini. Right? Sounds wonderful. Sounds bad. What we feeling? Yeah. It's just turkey, pesto, bacon on a sandwich, right? If you like pesto, you'll love it. So I served the turkey pesto panini to this lady. I go and check on my other tables, came back to it. I said, "Hey, is everything okay?" And she reaches in her sandwich, and she goes like this. And she has something in her hand. She says, "There is a wire in my sandwich." Yes, a wire. Not a hair, not a fingernail, which has happened before. Not a wire. Like, you bite into this, like, mouth's gonna be bleeding wire. What would you do as a server? Somebody give me some input. What you got? Okay. You'd apologize? Give her free food, okay. Give her what? A cookie, okay. Okay. Anybody else? I got wide range answers. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So here's what you need to know as a server, okay? As a server, you represent the company, okay? And the way that you act is going to signal to the customer whether or not this is normal or not normal. So if I'm just like, "Sorry about that," that tells the customer this is a normal thing, you just have to deal with it. In which case that customer is not coming back. I want to let the customer know that this is not normal. You had a oddball occurrence here, and we're going to fix this, okay? Here is the acceptable minimal thing that you can do, okay? The minimal thing as a good server, bare minimum. If you do less than this, you do not need to serve. The minimal thing, you take the sandwich back, have them remake it, and give them the sandwich for free, okay? That is the minimal thing. I did way more than that, okay? I took it back, had them remake the sandwich, gave it to them for free, gave them a free dessert, and I think they got a coupon too, right? I think they got a coupon too. The wire, The wire was from the brush of the grill. They were brushing it and it got in. It was gross. It was gross. I wouldn't go back probably. But here's the point. Here's the point. Listen, I need you to hear this. The minimal approach would have been acceptable. Okay? It would have been acceptable to just say you're sorry and give them the sandwich for free. But the minimal approach was not the best approach. Okay? The best approach was to do something like I did in that situation. See, I want to talk today about the difference between your minimal and your best. Okay? The Devo this week, our family Devo, it's simple. God deserves your best. God deserves your best. Let's read the scripture, Exodus 34:14. It says, "You must worship no other gods, for the Lord, whose very name is jealous, is a God who is jealous about his relationship with you." What does this mean? It means that God wants you by himself. God wants you all to himself. He wants you to be the main, he wants himself to be the main thing in your life. He wants to be what you think about, what your life is around, and he wants to be more important than everything else in your life. This verse clearly says that we are to have no other gods, but I know what you're thinking. Pastor Dylan, this is a Christian church. I'm not serving Muhammad. I'm not going after Greek gods like Zeus and all that. Of course, God is my only God. But here's what you need to understand. You were created to worship something. It's in your DNA. It's in your design. And you will worship something. And the thing that you worship is going to be what is number one in your life. We always worship our number one. What is number one in our life? It's what you spend your time doing, it's what you're invested in, and it's what's on your mind. Here's why your number one is important. Because everything else in your life is going to be based around your number one. Everything else in life is going to be based around your number one. Let me put it like this. I love Converse. Y'all know that, right? I was going to wear Converse tonight, but they're using them for fine arts, like almost every pair that I have. Shout out to Riley with the blue and yellow. I'll be matching with the opposite on Friday, right? So I was going to wear Converse, but I love Converse, and whenever I am figuring out what I'm going to wear to preach on a Wednesday or a Sunday, guess where I start? I start with the shoes, right? I start with the shoes. Who starts with the shoes? So, okay, so what do you start with? Start with a shirt? Okay. So there's different approaches, right? Regardless of what your approach is, you pick your number one first, and everything else is based around the number one. If I want to wear red Converse that day, I'm not wearing a green shirt. Unless I think it's red, but that's another story. I'm not wearing a green shirt. Why? Because I'm going to base my outfit on my number one. The shoes, right? I'm going to base my outfit on number one. It's the same thing in your life. It's not like for me that the outfit's not important. The outfit that I wear is important to me. I'm just going to start with my number one and base everything else around it. And it's the same with our walk with God. It's not that other things aren't important. It's that everything should just be dependent on our relationship with God. Right? Does that make sense? A lot of people have this misconception about Christianity that if I'm a Christian, I can care about nothing else in the world. I have to care about God and God alone, and anything else that I care about is a sin. That is wrong. Okay? There's other things in life that we care about. It just means that everything is based on number one. Here's some things that I like. I love Saints football. All right? It's been a sad few years for me since I moved to Houma, but I love Saints football. Who loves Saints football? Okay, I'll take two of you. That's fine. That's fine. Right? I don't mind the Bengals. I don't mind the Bengals, right? I love Saints football. Is me loving Saints football a sin? No. I love PlayStation. Who loves PlayStation? Okay, who loves Xbox? Oh, goodness. All right. Just kidding. I don't play enough to have a strong opinion. PlayStation is what I bought first. So that's probably, if I'd have bought an Xbox, that would have been what I like. But I like PlayStation. Is me liking PlayStation a sin? Who said kinda? He's like, bro, yeah, it's probably a sorry, Ron. I love you, Lance. You're my dog, bro. You're my dog. Recently, I've loved playing golf. Anybody like playing golf? Where you at? Yeah, me and Ryan been golfing over there. All right. Yeah, me and Pastor Alyssa went the other day. She's a lot better than she thought she was going to be, right? I love food. Who likes food? Yeah? Is liking food a sin in and of itself? No. I love my family. Is loving my family a sin? I love ministry. Is loving ministry a sin? No. Here's where it becomes a problem. When these things become more important than my relationship with God, everything I just listed, then it becomes wrong. So many ministers fall because ministry becomes their God. Right? And they're putting it at the wrong place in their list. Listen, your relationship with God is more important than your relationship with your family. I know that's a harsh statement. Because when you stand before God, He's not going to say, did your family serve me? He's going to say, did you have a relationship with me? Your relationship with God should be number one. This verse isn't saying that as Christians you can't care about any of these other things. That's silly. But what it's saying is that your relationship with God has to be number one. Getting on PlayStation and playing Madden isn't a bad thing, but it's a bad thing when my franchise is going deeper than my prayer life. That's when it's a bad thing. And I'm on year 2032, okay, in my franchise, right? But I'm deeper in my prayer life, so that's good, right? That's good. And I don't even have the recent one. I have Madden 21, so it's been a little bit, right? Playing golf with friends and family is not a bad thing. But when I'm hitting the target of the flag more than I'm hitting the target of where I'm trying to go with Jesus, it becomes a bad thing, right? Here's what I'm trying to get you to see. Anything can be your God, all right? Anything can be your God. Y'all pay attention, okay? Anything can be your God. We all are going to worship something. Even if you don't go to church, even if you're an atheist, even if you're like, I don't believe in any God, whatever, you still worship something. You're not going to not serve something. And these gods that aren't the real God, do you know what they're called? Idols, right? That big Christian word, idols. No, we may not be making a golden calf and worshiping it. We may not be making statues and commanding people to bow down. Not that kind of idol. But an idol is anything that we say, this is more important than you, God, and I'm going to worship this ahead of you. That becomes an idol. But here's where it gets confusing. Oftentimes, the things that we make other gods don't look like other gods in our life. Why is this? Because God is still a part of our life. He's just not number one. So we think we're okay because God's still a part of my life. Therefore, my relationship with God is okay. But it's possible to still have God a part of your life, but still have idols and put things ahead of Him. Okay? God has to be number one. He's jealous for you. All right? He's jealous. Some of y'all get mad. This side note, I'm just going to say it. Some of y'all get mad when your boyfriend or girlfriend cheats on you, but you cheat on God all the time. Okay? Just going to say that, right? So God has to be number one. Number one. And oftentimes, we still feel okay when God's a part of our life, but other things are number one. I mean, I still feel like I'm doing okay. I still feel like my relationship with God is going steady, copacetic, everything's cruising. We're good, right? It still feels like things are okay sometimes. Check it if things feel good and God's not number one, because you may be losing touch with God. Because God's always going to be drawing you in, and if you stop feeling that, you're on a downhill slope fast. Okay? So sometimes it still feels right when God is a part of our lives, but He's not number one. See, we could talk about many forms of idols. We could talk about friends. We could talk about games. We could talk about relationships. We could talk about so many different things. But here's what I find in the American culture. Here's what I find in the world that we live in. Here's what I find to be true for almost all people that have something other than God as number one in their life. The main idol that I see in today's culture that we serve more than we serve God is ourselves. So often we make ourselves the biggest idol. Why is this? Because when we serve the flesh and make ourselves more important to God, it feels right. Because of this, we can so easily get confused and deceived. Things feel right, but we still have things more important than our walk with God. So what happens? We don't want to compromise on the things that feel right and we love, so we just kind of fit God into our lives rather than basing our lives around him. I'm going to break that down a little further later. I got 6 pages tonight, and I'm on page 4, so we moving good. We good. I find many Christians, because of this, we take the minimal approach. When you take that approach that says, I'm just going to try to fit God into my life somewhere, we kind of live at a basic level as Christians, right? Our relationship with God becomes about, let me just make it to heaven and nothing else really matters. I just got to do enough to get by. But that's not the way that God intended you to live. So many people in today's world think that salvation is the end goal. Salvation is the place that we in. But God kept you on this earth after he saved you and did not take you to heaven right away, because there's more that he has for you. Salvation is not the end, it's the beginning. But so many of us are taking the minimal approach and saying, I'm going to stop at God's grace, leave it to myself, and not do anything for his kingdom. Right? We try to fit him into our lives and take the minimal approach. So here's what I want to talk about for the next few minutes. How do we put serving God above serving ourselves? How do we make God number one in our life and not just a part of our life? How do we take the optimal pursuit approach and not the minimal approach? What that means is taking the best approach, the best possible avenue to going deeper with God, the best possible scenario, right? I mean, if I'm going to a restaurant and I'm like, man, what's the best possible scenario? Best possible scenario, man, they're going to feed me like a 32-ounce steak with 3 sides of my choice and a dessert, and I get it for free. How many of y'all think that would be the best case scenario going to a restaurant, right? That'd be the best case scenario. That's the difference between the minimal approach and the best case scenario, right? We want to see what is the best possible avenue, rather than doing just enough to get by, not really doing anything significant, or just kind of coasting through life to be insignificant for the kingdom. If you do this, don't be surprised when crisis comes and you turn to something else and walk away from God because he wasn't really your God. When you take the minimal approach, you constantly feel frustrated and hopeless because you're missing out on so much more, and you never step into the fullness of what God has for you. And if you stay serving God long enough, you're going to become frustrated, you're going to become aggravated, you're going to become callous towards people, you're going to become callous towards the church, and you're going to turn very religious rather than having the love of God flow out of you. The minimal approach leads to a religious approach because we're not giving God our best. But when we take the optimal approach, we're asking ourselves the question, what's the best that I can give God? We have a solid foundation to stand on, and when crisis comes, we're able to lean into Jesus. We're able to do a significant work for the kingdom of God and make a real difference. We're able to be fulfilled because we're doing what God has created us to do. Now, who here would say, I want to be basic? Okay. Some of you are like, am I supposed to raise my hand? No, you're not supposed to raise your hand. Just paying attention. Good job. Because some people will be like, oh, you asked the question. That's me, right? You're paying attention. Good job. Good job. Good job. So how do we serve ourselves? What are some of the main ways? Man, we could talk about so many different ways that we serve ourselves. I want to talk about 3 ways that I find we serve ourselves. The first way that I find we serve ourselves is through emotions and feelings. Rather than following God, we follow the way that we feel, right? Your emotions were not meant to control you. Your emotions were meant to be an influence in your life, but they are not meant to dictate your decisions. But so many of us want to follow the way that we feel, and we lose all rationale. We abandon the word of God because this feels right. Therefore, I'm going to find justification as to why it is right. But when you follow the way that you feel, your feelings don't always line up with truth. When somebody's like, man, I'm just not really hearing the voice of God in the situation, the first thing I'm going to ask them to lead them to finding the voice of God in the situation, I'm going to say, how do you feel about the situation? Because what I have found is feelings are one of the number one things that get in the way of hearing the voice of God. And at your age, what I find is that a lot of times God's saying, hey, don't be in relationship with this person. But we're like, I really love them though, and we try to justify why it's okay, why we can go against what God's saying for us to do, right? Because I feel this way, therefore it must be a good thing, right? We follow the way that we feel. But God, we gotta do what God wants us to do instead. And what happens is we abandon rationale. Doing what feels right is way easier than doing what is actually right. And we often think that the good feelings we have towards a situation is justification for why we should follow through. Not going to spend time there. The second thing that we do that I find we serve ourselves is we like to serve ourselves in our bodies, right? I'm just about to get real practical here. Some people make sleep your God. All right? Some people make sleep your God. There's a difference between getting rest and being lazy. Okay? There is a difference. But Pastor Dylan, I'm so tired all the time. Go to bed earlier. Right? I understand there's sometimes there's issues, sometimes there's situations where you can't. I'm not speaking about that. I get that that's a real thing. But, and some people hate when I bring this up. Get off the blue light. All right? Blue light is horrible for your sleep. Don't drink 3 Monsters before you go to sleep. I can sleep through caffeine. Do the studies on sleep. That's not how it works. Not all sleep is created equal. All right? Just being honest with you. Just do the research, okay? Just because you're asleep don't mean it's quality sleep, okay? Don't make sleep your God. Don't make sleep your God. Like I said, there's a difference between needing rest and being lazy, okay? And again, there are things sometimes, medical issues that stop us from being able to sleep. I'm not talking about that, all right? I'm not talking about that. But there comes a point where you have to say, I'm going to get off the game. I'm going to get off YouTube. I'm not going to talk to this person anymore. I'm going to put my phone across the room, right? And I'm going to go to sleep. Go to sleep. It's good for you. Just don't be lazy, all right? If you're sleeping at 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., there's probably something off, okay? Because your body's not meant to be asleep at that time, right? So something needs to be readjusted, okay? Aside from medical issues and all that, I get that's a thing. Second thing, food. It's possible to make food your God. A lot of times when a crisis comes, we turn to food rather than prayer. Look, I'm going to be honest with y'all. I comfort eat, okay? Ministry is stressful, and sometimes I just want a candy bar. Or a brownie, yeah. Yeah, coming to a sermon near you. Yeah, I comfort eat. And listen, I'm just being real with y'all. It ain't a fast, it ain't nothing. God said, I need you to drink water for a little bit because you have no self-control when it comes to food. So I just need you to stop with the juices and the teas. And I was like, all right, God, let's do it. And I've been drinking water since. All right. See, sometimes we think, but it tastes so good. No, you're not growing the self-control that you're meant to have. Okay. Food can become an idol, right? We're going to turn to what our God is in the crisis. And when you're stressed out, when you're going through a lot, if you're turning to food rather than prayer, food has become your God. We comfort eat, all those different things. But here's what I want to spend the most time talking about is our schedule. Our schedule, all right? Our schedule. So I've heard this said, I don't have time for blank, whatever it is, okay? It's wrong, by the way. We've all been given the same amount of time. Here's the truth. We're always going to make time for what we value. Okay? Always going to make time for what we value. I want to give you really, really, really practical advice right here that's really going to help you with time management. Okay? It's 4 circles. Okay? 4 circles. Pastor uses this when he's mentoring people. It's great. I love it. The first circle is simple. It's things that I must do. I know the writing's real small there. Things that I must do. This is a general approach. This is how we should approach our days. This is how we should approach our scheduling. Here's things that I must do. What I must do is get in God's presence. If I'm going to survive as a Christian, if I'm going to survive as a believer, I have got to get in God's presence. It's not optional. It's very essential, okay? Other things that I must do is basic survival, building relationships, right? I got to go to school. Things that I must do. Okay? This also, you can fill in whatever things you must do on your own circles. I know you have circles there. These are just examples. You don't have to write these specifically. These are just examples of general things that we must do. What I must do? I've got to sleep. I've got to eat, right? Even though I can make those idols, they're still essential to my life, handled correctly, right? I've got to do those things. I've got to go to school, all sorts of stuff like that. I got to get in God's presence. Once I've done the things that I must do, then I get to go to the things that I get to do. Okay? These things only can be done, only should be done when the things that I must do take place. Okay? So, extracurricular is on there. But Pastor Dylan, I am on the baseball team, and you don't understand, this is my whole future. If you're not getting in God's presence and the baseball team is getting in the way, quit the baseball team. It's a problem. Okay? God's not going to be like, well, you didn't get in my presence, but at least you were left field for the Yankees. Good job. No, it doesn't work like that. Okay? Extracurriculars, things like that. Hanging out with friends. Okay? Notice that building relationships is in the first one and hanging out with friends is in the second one. Okay? Yes, we need community. Yes, we need to do those things. But we're only going to be able to hang out and do extra stuff like that when we've done the things that we need to do. Okay? Here's one. This is very relevant right now. Fine arts is a thing that I get to do. Fine arts is not a thing that I must do. Okay? If I'm so busy with fine arts that I can't get in God's presence, you're probably doing too much for fine arts. I'm just being honest with you. Right? And if you're like, well, I'm only in one category and I don't really do anything else in my life. Well, you're not spending your time doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, and you need to redirect your schedule. Okay? That would be an extracurricular right there. Now, once I've done the things that I must do, and then I do the things that I get to do, then I move to the things that I might do. I might do meaningless, fun pastimes, maybe hobbies that you have, things like that. I might have video or media entertainment such as YouTube, all those different things. I might get on the game, whatever those things. These are not bad things, right? These are things that are okay. They're not bad, but they're just, when they get to the place where we're not doing the things where I must do and then the things that I get to do, then I may be redirecting. I may not be in the place that I need to be in, okay? Once we've done the things that we must do, then the things that we get to do, then the things that we can do, we have the things that we're never going to do, and this one's simple, right? We should never sin. That should never be the main goal, right? Obviously, there's other things on there that you could personalize for yourself. This is just the general one. Here is what I find when somebody gets off base, when somebody's struggling with time management. And this God showed me this a while back, and I've seen it to be true so often. When we're handling time correctly, our chart looks like this. When we're not handling time correctly, everything ends up in the exact wrong spot. In other words, the things that I never do become the things that I must do. And the things that I must do become the things that I never do. When I'm not handling time correctly over time, what's going to happen is I never get in the presence of God. And what's going to happen is that I must sin. We get to a place where we're driven by sin because we're not getting in the presence of God. Things kind of reverse when we're not, over time, when we're not handling things, our time correctly. So personalize this to yourself, right? Personalize this to yourself. But what happens is we kind of try to take that center thing, getting in God's presence, and just kind of fit it wherever we want to, right? And we kind of say, you know what? I think I must get on the game, or I think I must do my hobby, or I think sinning, I can do that sometimes, right? These are approaches that happen, right? But when God's getting your best, He's number one in your life, you're getting in God's presence, and this is what a chart looks like for our time management when we're saying, I'm giving God my absolute best. See, God does not call us to the minimal approach. He calls us to the optimal pursuit. And so this changes the main question of vision for this walk with God. Instead of what's the minimum I can do to get by, it's what's the best possible way I can pursue Jesus. Here's why this is so cool. We're human, right? Raise your hand if you're human. Human. Okay, cool. We're all human here. Most of us are human. Okay. Well, for those of us that are human, this means that we're not perfect. Okay? Here's what I love. When our standard is way up here, giving God our absolute best, and we don't hit the mark, guess what? We're still okay. But when our standard's the minimum, and we don't hit the mark, we're in a place where we shouldn't be at. Right? And so the goal of the optimal pursuit is not, let me be perfect and never mess up. No, it's the vision of where we're going. It's the place that we're going, and we're saying, I'm going to give God my very best. That way, if I fall short a little bit of giving him my absolute best, I'm still in a place where I need to be. But if I'm going just enough to get by and I don't hit that mark, I'm in a place where I'm not even doing good with God, and our relationship with him is suffering. Okay? It changes the standard of our living. It changes what the approach is. I want to give one last illustration here before we end. It may be an illustration you've seen before, maybe not, but I think it's such a great illustration. You've probably, if you've been around, you've probably seen this once or twice. Okay? So, this vase right here, that was definitely not supposed to happen. So let me fix that real quick. That's all right. Watch this. Who likes rice? Who likes potato salad with their gumbo or rice with their gumbo? What about both? What about both? Let me get someone to help me out real quick. Anybody? All right. I'm going to do this, and you're just going to scoop that in there. All right. Give it up for Lola. Give it up for Lola. Hey, did you win the game against Maya? Or was it a tie? It was a tie the first time. Oh, wow. Sounds like a rematch to me. Okay. Hey. All right. So look, this vase right here represents your life. Okay. These rocks represent the things that I must do. Getting God's presence is the main one there. This rice represents everything else. Here's the minimal approach to God. What we do is we say, I'm going to do the things that I want to do. Right? Do the things I want to do. And then I'm just going to give God whatever is left. And what happens is, eventually, we're not able to give God everything that he deserves because our life and our time is filled up with everything else, and stuff starts not fitting. We start overflowing, and things get, we're already to the top there, right? Things don't really fit the way that they're supposed to fit, and it kind of falls off. It doesn't really have any room there. But there's a different approach here. If we say with these things that we're gonna that's getting in God's presence, if we put those at number one in our lives, let me take this out real quick. And this illustration I find is so true, and I'm going to explain it a little bit more when I'm done here. If we take the other approach and we say, I'm going to make God, let me get the rest of that rice out so you don't think this is some kind of trick or something. It's not a trick, just trust me. All right. We say, I'm going to get God number one, and I'm going to make sure I'm doing everything that I need to do in God, getting in his word, going to church so I can be discipled and going deeper. I'm building my relationships with people, Christian community. I'm seeking after the call of God in my life, and I'm making sure that I'm doing everything God wants me to do. And it's like, man, well, I don't even have much room for anything else. But what begins to happen is God takes our time, right, and he fills in the gaps, and then we have room. We end up having room for everything that we want to do, right? Because we give God number one in our lives, and we have room for everything else that he wants us to do, and we're not overflowing, right? We're not overflowing. Now, this obviously is a simple and sometimes silly illustration, but man, I find this to be so true. When I put God as number one in my life, what I find happens so often is it feels like I have so much more time, right? Let's be honest. Can we be honest? How many of you have said, I'm going to get in God's presence, but I'm just going to do it later today? Anybody ever said that? You know what happens to me when I do that? I'm frustrated all day. I'm frustrated. I'm off balance. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying God says you have to, the first thing in the morning, spend time with him. If you don't, you're not saved. No, I get that. Some people, your scheduled time is at night. I get all of that. But what I'm saying is this pushing it to a later time, okay? What happens so often is I get frustrated, I get off balance, and all I can think about is I need to get in God's presence, I need to get in God's presence. Then I'm not effective for everything else that I need to do that day. But whenever I wake up and say, first things first, I'm going to get in God's presence, man, I'm at so much peace for the rest of the day, and it feels like I have so much more time. It literally ends up working like this. I really believe God, like, blesses us with our time. He multiplies our time, not literally, but in a way where we're able to accomplish all that he wants. Because why? Because we're giving God our best. We're giving God our best. We're going to do something a little different. You all should have pens. I'm going to give you a sheet of paper. Okay? I'll give you a sheet of paper. You can just take one and pass it down. Here's what we're going to do. We've never really done this before in Set Apart Student Ministries, but I want to do this. Okay? Starting tomorrow, going through Wednesday, we're going to fast. Okay? Let me explain fasting real quick. Okay? A lot of people have a misconception about fasting, and their number one focus is the thing that they're giving up. Oh, I'm fasting this. I'm giving it up. And those of you in SUM that are in the spiritual formation class, we talk a lot about this. But another issue we have is like, I'm gonna fast, and I'm gonna fast food, but I'm gonna save all sorts of food until my fast is over, and then I'm just gonna eat it all. Okay, it's kind of not the point. Okay, it's kind of not the point. The point of your fast is not what you're giving up; it's actually what you're getting. Okay, you should not fast because, oh, I want to give something up to show how spiritual I am. No, the reason that you fast is because there's something that's getting in the way of your walk with God, and you're saying, I'm going to set that aside. And whenever I think about participating in whatever that is, I'm going to take a moment and pray. And if I have a certain amount of time that I do that each day, that I do that thing that I'm fasting, I'm going to take that time and I'm going to pray. Okay? This is why fasting is so much more than just food. Okay? One of my number one fasts that I do is the PlayStation. Just being honest with you. That's one of the number one things that I fast. All right? Starting tomorrow, I'm going to fast the PlayStation and I'm going to fast sweets. Okay? Why those two things? One, the PlayStation takes up my time and it causes me to not get in God's presence sometimes the way that I should. Number two, the sweets is a self-control thing. Right? I love sweets. And whenever I think about eating a sweet, I'm going to be like, wait a second. God, I need you. You're my provider. Help me to have self-control. Right? Now, I know it's like, Pastor Dylan, we got this big event this weekend, all this stuff. I used to do the whole, well, I'm going to fast, but I'm going to this birthday party, so I'm going to pause, and I'm just going to fast today at the end. That's not the point, okay? It's not what you're giving up. It's what you're getting. So what I want you to do is we're gonna take a minute, just ask God what it is that he wants you to fast. What we're asking is, God, what is that number one thing that gets in my way of my relationship with you? For some people, quite honestly, it may be a friend. You may have a friend in your life that you're just spending so much time with, and you're saying, I need to just, me and Pastor Alyssa did this, right? When we were dating, we were spending a lot of time texting, and we said, hey, we need to hear the voice of God. We literally would not communicate with each other, right? It was 2 months. Yeah, right? But we were getting so much out of it, right? Because we were hearing the voice of God. It's not about how much we weren't getting, it's what we were getting from God, right? Sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's food. Sometimes it's games. Sometimes it's the phone. Sometimes it's fill in the blank. Okay? But this is between you and God. What I want you to do is take a minute and say, and listen, you don't have to participate in this. All right? This is not a requirement. This is for your benefit. All right? And you do not have to participate in this. But if you're saying, you know what, I want to make sure I'm hearing the voice of God and getting in the presence of God the way that I'm supposed to, and making sure nothing's getting in the way, we're going to do this, okay? So I want you to take a minute and say, God, what is it that you want me to give up? And we're going to write that down. And after we write it down, we're going to come and we're just going to lay it right here as a signal of saying, God, I'm giving this to you this week. I'm not asking you to give it up forever. I'm just saying, hey, starting tomorrow through the end of next Wednesday night service, I'm going to give this up. Okay? I'm not just going to give it up, but I'm going to replace that thing with intentional time in God's presence. Okay? So take just 30 minutes, or 30 seconds, sorry, not 30 minutes. Take 30 seconds, pray and ask God what is it as he wants you to give up, and we're going to write it down, and we're going to bring it here, and then we're going to thank God that he's drawing us closer to him.
Hey everybody, thank you for watching the video. Go ahead and like and comment what God is doing in your life, and make sure to follow us on all social media platforms. And we want to see you here at Bayou Blue whenever we have a service, Sunday at 10:30 or 7 o'clock on Wednesday nights.